Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful, the beneficent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this debate. A very interesting debate. The topic is religion does more harm than good. And I will be opposing the motion. One of the biggest realities we all face in Ireland in particular is that we are all fortunately dressed. And this in itself is a fruit of religion. Let me explain. Before religion came to the Irish people in this very island, I asked you a question. How were the people dressed in this place? How were they living? If they were fully evolved intellectually and physically, what was wrong with them? What was holding them back for civilizing themselves? This is the question I ask. It was a religion which came to these people in this island, which dressed them, civilized them, educated them, and taught them how to live a life of a human being. This is what religion did to the people of Ireland in particular, and to the people of Northern Europe in general. My contention is that religion was one of the best things which happened to mankind. And my case will be based upon Islamic history. The motion is that religion does more harm than good. We have to go into history to see whether my case has any weight or not. Because the question itself depends on our history. We can only determine clearly whether religion does any good or not by going into history and see what the history was like of these religions and these ideologies people were proposing in the past, and how they made a change, how they developed the situation of mankind to such an extent that people now could read and write and communicate with each other in a civilized way. And what happened when religion was abandoned? What was the outcome? To me, what is more important is the social effect of religion. How a religion affects a society, how a religion may affect people living in a society, how people may behave towards each other, how a civilization comes about. This is the question I will be addressing, and show you, ladies and gentlemen, that religion in general, and Islam in particular, was a force for good, a force of good, which brought good and tranquility and peace to the world, not the other way around, not what happened in the 20th century. And we will see how that happened, inshallah, by the grace of Allah. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Durant, a philosopher who wrote a monumental history of civilization, on the first page of the first volume of his work, he states, a civilization consists of 4 elements: political stability, moral traditions, pursuit of knowledge and arts, and economic provisions. And all of these 4 elements rest upon one pillar, and that pillar is sense of security and justice. If you remove sense of security and justice from a society, all of these 4 elements will collapse and civilization will never come about. This is why the Europeans in the Northern Europeans, never had a civilization before a religion came to them. This is why Islam brought this justice and peace to the world, not only to the Muslim world, of course, also to the European world, as we will see in due course very quickly, ladies and gentlemen. So, the point is, how does Will Durant's point apply in this particular motion? How does he make a point? The point is, Islam, one of the basic tenets of Islam, or one of the basic principles in Islam, is to establish justice. The law of Islam stands for 5 principles, protecting 5 important things: protecting life, protecting intellect, protecting religion, protecting wealth, and protecting lineage and honor. So Islam stands for protecting these things. Your intellect has to be protected, your life has to be protected, your lineage has to be protected, and your religion and honor has to be protected. It's all about protecting the society, enabling people to live in peace with each other so that they can make progress. So from faith of Islam comes justice. Chapter 5 of the Quran, verse 8 clearly states, "O you believe, stand firmly for justice as witnesses to God, and do not avoid justice, even if you dislike the other, be just. Do not avoid justice, because God does not love the unjust." Justice, the pillar of any society. Those four elements will collapse if this pillar is non-existent from a society. Justice, peace, security. And this is what a religion does to a society. Brings security and you will see progress. You will see civilization. You will see peace. And all the questions Michael was addressing, blood transfusion, disease and all of that, and sexually transmitted, these are all semantics. These are not important. What is important is what a religion does to a society. Does a religion allow a society to make progress? Does a religion allow them to educate themselves? Does a religion allow them freedom of speech so that they can express themselves openly? I'm not here defending Catholicism or Protestants. I'm defending Islam here. Our history is entirely different. What the Europeans faced in Europe in the Middle Ages and onwards. Our history is different. We never had witch burnings and heretic burnings and scientist burnings. We never had that. In our lands, people were prosperous. They were free to say what they said, and they were free to write what they wanted to write. And now people, when Muslims landed in Spain, for example, they created a civilization of an unprecedented scale, ladies and gentlemen. They brought all the knowledge of the Greeks and the Chinese and the Indians in one place. And they brought it for the people, for the masses to study it, free of any persecution and any fear. And the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims coming together, studying these sciences free of charge. First time in the history of mankind, it was a religion which brought knowledge to people, to the masses. Now children as young as 4 and 5 are going to schools and studying, reading and writing. This was done by religion. This was done by a religion, not by atheists or a secular mindset or a secular way of thinking. Atheists don't even have any history, ladies and gentlemen. We do. We do. And this is our history. So Islam establishes that justice. How? I can go on about the history of Islam and how the Muslims, when they came to power, and how they treated the other based upon the Quranic principles. And that justice brought peace to masses. They could live together in prosperity and in peace. So much so that the Christians and the Jews themselves stated clearly that the best thing which happened to them was Islam. For example, Zion Zohar, a Jewish historian, writes in his book, A History of Sephardic and Mizrahi Jewry, on the page number 9, he states that when the Muslims landed in Spain, the Jews welcomed them as liberators from the Catholic persecution. And there are Christian historians who were writing at the time when the Muslims were taking over the land. And they stated, people like John Bar Pinkai, who was a Christian, he said, we have never seen so much peace in our lives, even in our history. Then there were people like John of Nicaea, writing in Egypt when the Muslims were taking the land. He stated that our own Christian people, they are siding with the Muslims against the Byzantines, who were also Christians, because the Muslims were more merciful and just. There were people like Dionysius of Telmahari, who writes, he's again a Christian historian, he writes, when the Muslims took the city of Damascus for the second time, the Christians opened the doors for them. Why? Because of justice and peace. And this justice and peace, ladies and gentlemen, brought them together. And then we had the European Renaissance. Do you know what some of the scholars, some of the historians are arguing today, ladies and gentlemen? People like George Saliba from Columbia University, he argues that the origins of Renaissance lie in Spain, Islamic Spain. Spain, which was governed by Sharia law, the law of Islam, where people could live together in peace, together, and they work together for the common good of mankind. Today, secular ideologies are taking that education away from you. £9,000 for a degree in the UK, not done by religion. Not done by religion. Religion brought free of charge education to people. Islam did that. Islam did that to the children of the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims, regardless of any differences, ladies and gentlemen. This is the fruit of Islam in history. And then we had the progress we saw in Northern Europe, coming from Islamic Spain, for example. There were people from England in the Middle Ages, in the 12th century, traveling to Spain to take knowledge from the Muslims, ladies and gentlemen, and they brought this knowledge of science and philosophy to the Westerners. The Europeans, the Northern Europeans, the Irish and the English and the German and the French, they were utterly ignorant about these sciences. Robert of Ketton, a man who lived in England, writing a book, in fact translating an Arabic book written by Jabir bin Hayyan on chemistry, writes in the preface that never did the people of Europe know this science before, and this is why I'm translating this book for them, to know this science, the science of chemistry. Homeyard, writing a history of chemistry published by the Oxford University Press, he states, without the Islamic chemistry, one cannot imagine modern chemistry. Ladies and gentlemen, how is religion bad? This is what the fruit of religion is. Even principles like tolerance, peaceful coexistence, convivencia came from a religion called Islam. John Locke, writing on modern democratic principles. You may disagree with him because he was a Christian, right? But his principles still stand to this day in Europe. He was writing on democratic principles and he wrote 3 treatises on tolerance. And where did he get his ideas from, ladies and gentlemen? He used to attend lectures in the University of Oxford, delivered by a man called Edward Pocock, who was a lecturer on Islamic studies in the University of Oxford. The University of Oxford, ladies and gentlemen, the first science ever taught in that university in the 12th and the 13th century was the science of astronomy, which came directly from Islamic Spain. And Islamic Spain was the fruit of Islam, the fruit of the Quran, a book which we believe came from God Almighty, whether you like it or not. This is what religion did. Whether this religion is true or not is another question altogether. I'm not here to address that point. I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that religion did more good to mankind than harm. Let me tell you about the secular history. What happened in the 20th century when people walked away from religion. When people walked away from religion. Michael wants to wash his hands away from communism. He doesn't want to be a communist for the right reasons, and I applaud that. But you have to be consistent. Communists were atheists. And communist Russia was the first atheistic state in the history of mankind, to my knowledge. And what happened? You have to tell me what happened. You go and see what happened. 6 million alone killed in Ukraine because they were a people of religion. Christians massacred, killed, starved to death. And China, 80 million people killed in China by the people of religion? No, by an atheistic ideology, which emanated from social Darwinism. We are all matter. If we are all matter, then it doesn't really matter. Hamza puts it this way. We are all matter. This is dialectic materialism we are facing, right? All the societies are in conflict. This is inevitable in our history, in our social realities. So we are all in a conflict. It doesn't really matter, we all matter. This is how the communists thought. And they were quite consistent scientifically and socially. Communism makes more sense than what Michael believes in. Communists were more consistent. They were more consistent with atheism. This is what atheism leads to, ladies and gentlemen. We are all matter. We are all animals. What religion did, religion brought you to civility, civilization, clothed you, educated you, and taught you how to live a life of civilized people. What Michael wants to do, Michael wants to take your clothes off again. This is not an accusation. Michael wants you to go back to that animal age of Ireland before religion. Live in caves. Live in caves, live in huts, don't have any religion, don't have any discipline, don't have any civilization, because civilization, you cannot deny this fact, civilization did come from religion. You cannot divorce religion from civilization. You have to show me an atheistic civilization. If you can bring some history, if you have any record, if you have any history to show, bring it. And I will acknowledge it. I will accept it. But if you cannot bring any examples from your history, then you don't have a case. I have a case which I have just briefly presented. I have a lot of evidence with me which I couldn't put in front of you, unfortunately, because I had to give a speech in 15 minutes. But ladies and gentlemen, my point is very clear. Even in a nutshell, I have to share this with you, that religion was and is and will be a force for good in our lives, not a force of bad, evil, or misfortune. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you very much.